Поприветствовать на открытом университете. Сегодня будем продолжать разговор про тренды в экономике, мировые и российские. И хотелось бы сказать, что еще проект «Открытый университет» он международный. Есть российские спикеры, которые представляются вузами, политехом, университетом ITMO, Европейским университетом в Санкт-Петербурге. Также есть у нас спикеры, которые специально приезжают для того, чтобы поделиться своими знаниями из других городов, в том числе из Европы. Собственно, и для начала, для того, чтобы поприветствовать вас, хотел бы пригласить сюда на сцену представителя Европейского Союза в России, Сорона Либориуса, пресс-секретарь представителя Европейского Союза в России. Поприветствую.
Спасибо большое. Я знаю, что мы уже работаем несколько часов, и я уже сказал несколько слов о как рады мы в сотрудничестве с Открытым университете. Я очень рад, что продолжает большой аншлаг, и много людей нашли время сегодня, когда прекрасное лето есть у нас, обсуждать такие релевантные темы. Первые лекции были интересны. Я уверен, что продолжаем. Это хороший тренд. И я очень рад, что наши спикеры из разных стран Европейского Союза пришли и могут участвовать в этом мероприятии. Когда я думал о Открытом университете и когда мы обсуждали на благо чего, куда мы едем на этот процесс, я думаю, что мы через дискуссию, через диалогом, мы строим эти мосты, которые ведет к будущему. И тема будущего, тема образования, тема капитал, тема, которая может считаться довольно, как сказать, как по-английски, fluffy thinking, но они становятся реальными через этими интересными дискуссиями. Так что я очень рад, что наше сотрудничество продолжает. Большое вам спасибо. И это большое вам спасибо за участие.
Спасибо. Собственно, на предыдущих лекциях мы много говорили о каких-то таких технологиях, которые меняют рынок абсолютно. Мы говорили про блокчейн и про биткоин. И, собственно, сейчас у нас сложная задача на самом деле. То есть вы очень смелые люди. Сегодня у нас задача разобраться с тем, что такое блокчейн и как он поменяет, собственно, рынок в будущем. И об этом нам расскажет Александр Хорст Норта, доцент Таллинского технического университета, Эстония. Спасибо.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction, and thanks for inviting me, and thank you for taking the time to listen to me. So I'm quite overwhelmed that the room is so full. Let's get started. I have quite a lot to talk about, and indeed, so this point about fluffiness going towards concrete things, that's actually a very good one, because I have a part in my presentation that is very much about that, and it's kind of my own story, if you will. So, my name is Alex Norta, and I'm at the moment I'm an associate professor at TTU, but I hold a PhD degree from TU Eindhoven in the Netherlands. And I came via Finland, where I was for a while a postdoc researcher in Helsinki and in Oulu. So Oulu was a little bit too north for me. Then I decided I have to go south again, and I ended up in Tallinn. So my talk today is about smart contracts for blockchain tech 2.0, and I have to disappoint you a little bit. I will stick more to the fluffy stuff, and actually the concrete stuff will come then after me by my friend Asse Sauger, with whom we've been collaborating for over 2 years, I would say, on blockchain topics, and he works on a startup about smart contracts, and I think that's a little bit inspired by what I will talk about today. So my approach for this presentation is a bit top-down. Blockchain tech as such is bubbling up in a bottom-up way, but my direction into smart contracts has been a little bit accidental. And that's a bit reflected here in the agenda, so I will first talk about what is actually a contract, to prep you. then just very high-level ideas about what the blockchain is all about. And to me, Bitcoins, there's a lot of fuss about the Bitcoins, but to me that's actually just a teaser. And I'm really much more interested about the socio-technical implications of this blockchain technology, which is actually quite startling when you think about it. So then I have a part about my own journey towards smart contracts. So I stumbled across that really a bit by accident. I move a bit more into blockchain 2.0 and what the societal implications are. And this is indeed very, very disruptive technology potentially that can turn society upside down. Then there's one part, DIY, do it yourself. So everything is nowadays, of course, freely available on the internet, open source. Same holds for blockchain tech. You can just download everything from the internet and learn about it yourself through YouTube and through all sorts of extra material. So I have given you here a lot of nice extra links and then some conclusions. So what is actually a contract? Contracts are very important for our society. Actually, any organization is a collection of contracts. So contracts really drive our business activities every day. And at the moment, or initially when we think about it, then a contract is actually a written or spoken agreement. So a contract in principle already comes into existence if we just agree on something. So I want to, buy coffee from you in the canteen. And so, we shake hands about it. That would already be basically a contract, and then there's some transfer of money coming out. More formally, there's a written part, for example, that can concern employment, sales, tenancy, and it's to be enforceable by law. So if you violate certain policies that are part of an agreement in a contract, then basically you violate the consensus. So everybody consents to these policies, and then you have to basically transact accordingly. Now, so these contracts have to come into existence consensually, which really means they come into existence voluntaristically. Yeah. So if I don't want to buy the coffee, there's no consent on my side. There's no contract. There's no initiation of force. And there should be, as I said, a consensus. So so of course, if there's some lawyers in the audience, they will tell me there's much more to it. But I think informally we can agree this is basically philosophically the core part of what an agreement is all about. A contract. So what's then the problem here with conventional contracts? So if we think about the written form of it, it's just done paper. So it's paper and ink, usually very underspecified. And so nowadays we're a little bit more advanced. So we have electronic paper and ink, you could say, in a PDF, but it's still not something which is machine readable sufficiently for supporting the carrying out of the actual business transaction. So conventional contracts, even when they're very convoluted, they might still end up being in relevant parts very underspecified because they do not take into account the process nature of a transaction. There's no process awareness. It's difficult to automate the carrying out of a transaction. So the enforcement becomes very hard, and it's actually very hard to see if you can trust the counterparty you transact with. And there's also an enormous coordination effort, and actually this need really exists. So, for example, I know a person who works for HP as a contract manager. And so, you know, HP, they sell these printers, but you can sell entire packages, say you're some sort of a hospital. and so you buy an entire system, hardware, servers, some cloud, some software, some wirings, some training for staff, process re-engineering, and so forth. So this is a very complex type of a contract. And that person, I concretely know, sits in front of screens with tons of Excel sheets, and then some documents come into existence, but they're these dumb type of documents, and literally her eyes are popping out just monitoring all those different Excel sheets. All effects have to be brought together. Then there's an enormous coordination effort to make sure the contract is really carried out the way it should be. And then just for example, if you have all these periodic updates and changes, and service packs have to be changed and whatnot, so this is all an enormously time and money consuming issue if people have to do that. And as people, we are of course all very fallible. So that means we make mistakes, and actually if we delegate these automatable policies to a contract that is machine readable, then this becomes all a whole lot easier in theory. So, and then the blockchains come in, and the blockchains, they come in initially as a kind of a bottom-up way, as a new transaction machinery. And so in the most high-level way, you could say it's a bit of a distributed database where some core entries are recorded, and they are cryptographically recorded. So you have basically people have private keys, and then there's a public key. They have to be matched. Basically, you go through a cryptographic digest, and then some number pops out that can only be understood and decrypted if you have that private key. It's a very secure way of recording events. It's secure from tampering and revision, so this is very good. For example, you have a conventional database system that is under control by some governmental entity, and there's some records, say for managing land, and this is a concrete project that has been carried out with blockchains for managing land records. Was it in Honduras, I believe? So blockchains were actually used to bring those land deeds into such a blockchain ledger, where the entries could not be tampered with. So in other words, it was suddenly not possible anymore that somebody comes along and bribes some public servant to change the records in a conventional database. So this is not really possible in blockchains, and this is very nice because suddenly we have a mechanism where we can basically evaluate to which extent we can trust our counterparties, and if the counterparty we try to engage with actually has a good reputation. Yeah. So what we know conventional so far is that blockchains are used for issuing non-government, state-free forms of currency where no privately owned central banks are involved. So I think this is very nice. And this is going prolific, but actually this is only the beginning. On a very high level, so what I'm doing here in this presentation is the following, that I'll just give you tons of links, and I hope that these slides, they will be offered on the internet. So this is the alleged person who invented the blockchains. Now that person actually doesn't really exist, Satoshi Nakamoto. Most probably it's a certain individual in Australia, so I forgot now what the name was, I forgot the name, but most probably this is an entire team that came up with this blockchain technology. And actually this paper, I encourage you that you take a look. You can just download it from this link. And this is actually a concrete screenshot that's been taken out, so you need to hold those private keys, and so there are public keys, and there's a cryptographic digest. Certain factors are being pushed into the cryptographic digest, and then basically a block is being filled up with entries. These blocks, they have to be mined into existence. So there's an entire distributed mechanisms for creating those blocks, and also the coins, which then can be used according to the principle of digital scarcity. This is a very important point, digital scarcity. I won't go into more details, leave that to Asse. But important is that you see the link to this paper. So one issue then there, which so I'm at an informatics department, so I have of course certain research interests in that primarily. There's some very interesting hard problems. So for example, performance issues. How do you manage then this blockchain? One option is to organize then your blocks with the so-called Merkle tree. So also for that there are all sorts of papers on Scholar and so forth which you can use yourselves. I just want to point at that and you can follow up on that by yourselves. So as I said, Bitcoin 1 or blockchain 1.0 is really this inception of government-free cryptocurrencies, which we can just use. It's open source. We can all participate in it. Nobody can stop us. We can just download the wallet, get into using bitcoins ourselves, because the government didn't invent money and currency. It's not like that. Okay. And certainly bitcoins were not invented by any government. So it's all freely available up to us to use that. But what I'm really much more interested in is this idea of smart contracts, and I will tell very briefly what the difference is. So when blockchains were invented to issue currencies in accordance with this principle of digital scarcity, the protocol layer on top of the blockchain was only equipped with a very small set of commands. And this was done deliberately, you could say, for security reasons. But then very quickly came the idea that actually we could use this to make smart money. In other words, the protocol layer we could extend with so-called Turing-complete languages. And if you don't know who Turing is, that's what he once upon a time looked like. He was a major cryptography expert. And there's this so-called idea of Turing-complete languages. So very informally you could say a Turing-complete language is one that is expressive enough so that you can program solutions for any computational problem you can think of. So for computer science puritans, of course, there's a much deeper definition for that, but I'll just give you a very informal high-level take on it. And this is really what happened, that the protocol layer, some started picking up on extending the protocol layer with these Turing-complete languages. And suddenly you could program smart money in a sense that actually you could carry out transactions based on a computational contract. And this is the evolution into what some call blockchain tech 2.0. And it leads us to this evolution into smart contracts. So, and this idea came up, say, from a practitioner level, industry level, from the startup communities, in crypto, anarcho startup communities, maybe some 2 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago. And so once upon a time, when I did my PhD in the Netherlands, in Eindhoven, so this is the cover of my old PhD thesis. When I defended it I had it ready in 2006, 2007 beginning, I defended it. I thought this was the best, most amazing piece of work. Now I'm quite embarrassed when I open it and I see all the typos. I think it's horrible. But back then, this was embedded in an EU project called Crosswork with some industry partners from the automobile industry. And so this is the other book, which basically summed up all the results from this Crosswork EU project. And unwittingly, so while my assignment for this PhD was actually to study how to automate cross-organizational business process automation, what I ended up doing was actually, in the end, I developed a smart contract language. I just didn't really call it like that. And it wasn't really clear to me that what I did was all about smart contracts. So then this idea became dormant because I didn't get any input or stimulus to pursue this idea further. But then recently, when I started reading for the first time about smart contracts and that this is coming out of blockchain tech, I got quite excited, and actually then I started picking up my old PhD thesis that I'm now rather embarrassed about. And I took parts and extended that further into papers, which I just give you the headings here. And for example, this is about a smart contracting language, more or less the ontological concepts and properties that such a smart contract language should have. So this is open access. If you just take the title, enter it into Google, you will find it for download. If you know sci-hub.cc or .co, then also the other papers you can download for free, but okay. In any case, so I then started publishing a whole series of papers for conferences and journals. And what this really was, coming differently to the blockchain community from a top-down direction, where I had a solution developed already years ago, but I was lacking the real-life world problem. So suddenly the blockchain tech people came up with this idea of smart contracts, and and I realized immediately these guys, they have never thought about the application layer. Okay, it's fine and dandy to have a blockchain and then to have a Turing complete language, and then they all became very excited. Yeah, now we got smart contracts. And in my mind, I just thought, okay, wait a minute. There's actually a whole lot you people haven't thought about. So this is really my direction, coming in from top down. And basically, in these papers, I work out a rather expressive, ontologically expressive smart contracting language, and also the entire governance platform for setting up smart contracts, actually rolling out a decentralized governance infrastructure to an enactment point where you can orchestrate several decentralized autonomous organizations. And maybe in connection with Ethereum, you've heard some stories. There was a big scandal recently. Actually, it only now came to some sort of ending where Ethereum, who knows Ethereum? Okay. So Ethereum went into a hard fork. So Ethereum is a smart contract solution based on blockchain technology. And it's actually, I would say, quite a big deal. Very disruptive technology potentially. But this idea, which I conceptually hatched here, of decentralized autonomous organizations, to my surprise, that happened for real. But they had a problem. They didn't really think about all the governance issues, which I write about here in those papers. And they ended up with a big disaster that somebody hacked into a DAO, decentralized autonomous organization, and stole millions and millions of euros. Was it 60 million or something? And now, with some very ham-fisted techniques, they then figured out how to basically resolve that issue, more or less, less than more. So for me, this is all quite an interesting development, because I can see basically how these ideas in a top-down way match onto these blockchain efforts that are coming from the crypto-anarchistic startup community. So what is a smart contract? In a most high-level form, basically what you want to do with a smart contract is you want to regulate the manner how a transaction is being carried out. And that means you have certain policies, so you need to define the parties that transact. They have to have a clear ID. They need to be able to digitally sign off, so that is also something that Sauger is working on. You need to have clarity what you transact about, and the very important part here is that you understand the transaction is actually needs to be process aware, and you have to have cross-organizational alignment of those processes. So this is yet another point which the blockchain tech community is not thinking about at all at this stage. So the smart contract, if everybody consents to it, becomes kind of an intelligent agent in the middle and orchestrates, in the end, the orderly transaction between several parties that form a temporary e-community, basically to trade services. So the service offers, the service requests, and yeah, so you have quite a lot of accountability, you have traceability, and actually potentially that way, if you automate the enactment of these policies, you have potentially a massive performance and productivity actually revolution, okay? And certainly that way you don't need tons of middlemen, you don't need the lawyers anymore, you don't need a lot of compliance regulators and auditors. All of that you can basically push into a smart contract and track everything with blockchain entries where you can then mine what has been going on. So once again, it's a much better solution for trust and reputation management, and essentially a whole lot of bureaucracy just completely collapses and falls off you, and instead you can transact directly in a peer-to-peer way, in a scalable way. So that's at least the vision of the benefit of this concept. So without going further into detail, I would like to give you kind of an overview of what this really means potentially for society. And note that I give you here a couple of links, so if these slides are being made available for everybody, then you can just click on those yourselves and read about them. So basically what this new technology is giving us, if we understand that suddenly we can transact with each other in a peer-to-peer way, in a scalable way, and in a way which is voluntaristic. So basically what we get is a form of digital anarchy. At the moment we still have societies that are very pyramidically organized. There are layers and layers of bureaucracy. So what we really have is a system of qualitative central planning. The transition we're moving into is basically all the layers, they drop off, they collapse. And instead, we have a very flat type of society where we can directly, in a peer-to-peer way, transact without any middleman. So we end up with total decentralization, disintermediation, and distribution. Okay. So this is quite interesting, and what it really means is we don't need banks anymore, we don't need regulators anymore. Lawyers, so if you're a lawyer and you study conventional law, you don't need it anymore either, because basically the new canon of law will be algorithms. And I can prove that point because if you think about something like bitcoins, I always find it very funny. Bitcoins come up and then we have, you know, the established banking legacy system, let's be kind and call it that way. And then they they bring out all the regulators and all the compliance people and everything, and oh, we got to regulate this. So they want to regulate something like bitcoins in an old school way. But what they don't understand is that something like Bitcoin, which is just one example of a larger set of really very exciting, very diverse types of cryptocurrencies for very different purposes, they are already super regulated. Why? Because they are 100% on open source algorithms. And that is already the regulation. There's no need for anything else. And since everything is open source, you can immediately see if the code has been tampered with. So that means if we think about that further, and certainly we think about, we extend it to smart contracts, which we could then employ to govern society in a really totally brand new way. it really means that the old school set of and canon of laws in public and private level becomes obsolete. So this doesn't happen, of course, from today to tomorrow, but it will be a slow creeping process, so where, bit by bit, chunks of conventional law are being chipped off and being taken over by sets of algorithms. So this is what I mean here with law and business completely changes. So this current central planning reality that we have with privately owned central bank, where we're not allowed to know who the actual owners are, who are in cahoots with governments, who then decide who gets some contracts for some business, and then everything is kind of hierarchically organized. This is all basically in question. Okay. So just some examples that we can then pursue with this new technology. So I guess you all know what a notary is. So once again, we have the legal profession, we have notaries. So what do you do with a notary? You go there, you have some sort of document, and there has to be some sort of government approval that this is a correct document. Maybe you want to share some trades, or you got your last will, or maybe you have some, I don't know, some certain documents where you need to prove authenticity. In principle, that's not needed anymore. So what you can do alternatively, there's a web service which actually exists. This is only one example, a proof of existence. So you can take any file, just push that into the web service, and out after cryptographic digest comes a unique number that pertains exactly to this one digital artifact you feed into this web service. And then you can keep that. Actually, I used that service myself for technical reports that I wanted to disclose, to collaborate with several scientists on a journal paper. And I wanted to make sure that I can claim my ownership for this paper. So I just pushed it into the service, I got my cryptographic digest, and if anyone just tampers that document with a single bit, then this cryptographic digest number completely changes. So that way I basically have a form of control over preventing plagiarism and theft of my own ideas. But if you think about it further, then this is technology which very, very well replaces the job that a conventional notary would do. Another very exciting idea is this blockchain idea, and basically what you can create with that is a completely stateless passport. It's actually, when you think about it, so I link here to a YouTube video where some people use a set of freely available web services to create a very strong identification that you can then use for, say, becoming business active, for transacting, for getting accounts, and so forth. And it's actually much stronger, as I said, compared to these old, silly government-issued passports that we still have to deal with. Concretely, this blockchain idea is used to help refugees who have the problem that they cannot become commercially active. They arrive somewhere and they're basically rendered economically destitute. They have maybe all sorts of skills and services they could offer, but de facto they're being disabled because, for example, they can't get any ID. Without any ID, they can't get any bank accounts, they can't get any address, so it's a disaster. Instead, you can just circumvent all of that and find similar solutions that are potentially even much stronger using blockchain technology. One solution is this blockchain ID part. What I did not include there is you can even go further and have credit cards that are fully backed by bitcoins, where the accounts can be charged at will from, say, donators or family members who could be anywhere in the world, because there's simply no financial repression possible against Bitcoin transactions. So you could be on the move as a refugee, and you run out of money. So you have this like Master or Visa type of credit cards where you can just pay in a conventional way, but in the background it's fully backed by a blockchain, by a Bitcoin wallet, and that way you can basically become commercially active. So the other story is about smart contracts, just following their the development. I think it's this. Yeah. So as I said, this the smart contract idea is a direct attack against established middlemen, which we don't need anymore. So one very prominent example is, you know, these hedge funds and traders and all that, and system banks. They're not needed anymore. Instead, one initiative is this Ultracoin, which is really a very specifically developed technology for automating financial transactions. So this is not a very expressive smart contract solution, but you can definitely use that to basically render conventional, old school financial trading organizations completely irrelevant. You don't need them anymore. Instead, everything they do, you can just program Ultracoins to trade derivatives and all that, stocks and so forth. So no need anymore to pay traders excessive Christmas bonuses. Nobody needs them anymore. So this idea was taken further. So Bitalo is another nice solution for smart contracts, intended a little bit less for purely financial domains. And then we have the real hard hitter, Ethereum. So for those who understand what's going on in the blockchain tech arena, this is, I would say, at the moment the most sophisticated development, and actually with this, not only can you develop smart contracts, but you could actually develop a completely fresh next generation solution for distributed internet systems. Yeah, and basically then this way you can reprogram the Facebooks, the Twitters, and all that without any big government spying capabilities. But instead, you know, everything is basically cryptographically secured, and you have your anonymity back. So the most prominent member actually who started with Ethereum is Vitalik Buterin, who's a very young guy. So this morning we talked about, you know, you have to study, go to university, and there are all these expectations. He's a dropout. Okay, so what he did, he learned all his most important skills just by working partially for free or with a little bit of money for all sorts of blockchain tech startup companies. He's now 22 years old, I believe, and he's already won very, very prestigious prizes. I would say Ethereum is an enormously disruptive type of technology, and yeah, that puts maybe the presentation we had in the morning into a different light, where maybe you have to ask, do you really learn all the important skills that you need to be successful at university? So this Ethereum is really at the very forefront of digital currencies. And if we take this then even further, and this is very dear to me, you can start entire countries powered by blockchain. And one example here is BitNation. It's like Linux, it's open source, so you can create platforms in clouds that provide governance services for you, just like any conventional territory-based nation would do. Okay, so I could basically download the software from, you know, just fork from Git and make my own country. I could create Alex Nation and then offer that as a secure platform for all sorts of services. Maybe financial services, insurance services, healthcare services, e-learning services, whatever, who want to hop on top of my Alex Nation and then want to trade. The implications there are, while maybe if you are locked into a territory where you're kind of coercively forced into some sort of citizenship, here in a cloud nation, you have to be attracted to become a citizen. So basically your citizenship is not based on violence and coercion, but instead you get your citizenship based on voluntarism and the non-initiation of force. And I think that's quite cool. So if you have several platforms of bit nations or whatever you want to call it, basically countries in the clouds, you could just become citizens, register your citizenship, and then use services. You could transact, you could have all sorts of different flavors. Maybe you want to have a more anarchistic type of cloud platform, maybe a more conservative, or maybe, I don't know, you like Sharia law, then you could get into a platform that prefers that. If you suddenly think that a certain cloud platform does not adhere with your principles anymore, then you just cancel your citizenship and you maybe move on to another platform. So this sounds a bit like science fiction, but I would encourage you to take a look. Actually, if you go on BitNation platform, you will see that the Estonian e-residency program, who has heard of it? Okay. Maybe no time to get into it here, but in other words, you can become a virtual Estonian. Estonia wants to become a country in the cloud, but there's already competition, the first territory-based country in the cloud, but there's already competition through solutions like BitNation, okay? But what has now happened is that the e-residency program uses BitNation as an e-notary for services. So if you go to BitNation and you go to the notary section, you will see the Estonian logo, and essentially through the Estonian ID card you can get in there. And in principle you have the seeds of a powerful platform where you can then trade all sorts of blockchain tech-based services. Now here's a little example of what you could do. Then if you think about the smart contracts, this is a little picture from one of my papers. And this is about e-healthcare. So if we assume here that we have a home for elderly and somebody gets sick, this might be in a very remote area. We have then a situation where we need to figure out where the nearest hospital is. We might need to have some sort of diagnosis from different types of specialists. It could be that a patient is forced to switch, to let's say be x-rayed several times by just switching different specialists. Every time you come to a different specialist for a diagnosis, they say, okay, we've got to x-ray you. Now I don't like that because x-rays are not terribly healthy for you. Might cause cancer, so it would be very good if you have a very agile peer-to-peer way of establishing fast contracts where you can basically trade healthcare information so that, for example, you don't have to be x-rayed many times. So you could have an x-ray one time, it's in a database, the event is logged securely in an encrypted form. And then, so maybe this one diagnosis doesn't yield anything. So then there's a contract with another specialist. There's a so-called multi-signature scenario where a certain X-ray picture is released because with the digital multi-signature, there's an agreement. Okay, you can release that X-ray to another specialist. The other specialist pays, say, in bitcoins to the other specialist instantaneously for rather fast and quite for free. And you can then basically create that way a very complex type of virtual enterprise, you could say, for e-healthcare to the benefit of the patient, where you also save quite a bit of time and money, so you cut down a lot of bureaucracy. You have quite a bit of security and also trust and reputation management that is possible in terms of what the performance is of doctors who are involved. So if somebody misdiagnoses quite often, you could in principle record all of that in blockchain as well and use that type of information for choosing with whom you want to transact. So basically, you have suddenly the option. So this is only one idea which goes into a direction of cyber physical systems. The idea is there really that you have cloud governance platforms and flocks of smart objects. In this case, for e-healthcare that get orchestrated, and of course their use would cost money. So with the old school dinosaur financial system, it's not really possible to have scalable and fast payment mechanisms for very surgically using smart services. But if you would suddenly bring blockchains, cryptocurrencies, and in their extension smart contracts into the picture, suddenly you find solutions for business models that previously would never have been possible. Yeah? It's just one little thought experiment. So, do it yourself. So this is just a teaser, to be honest, and I encourage you, if you like the topic, so there's really an enormous amount of innovation possible. Certainly if you're entrepreneurially minded, this just opens up endless opportunities to start companies. The entire area is extremely interdisciplinary. So you could think of solutions for e-healthcare, for human resource management, maybe for production. I'm not sure if you heard of a term called Industry 4.0. Actually, there are companies like IBM and Bosch who are very seriously looking into blockchains and smart contracts at this very moment to figure out how to make this vision of a fourth industrial revolution, that's very much smart, become reality. So what I have here is a bunch of links to the core paper of Satoshi Nakamoto, some more papers from the Satoshi Nakamoto Institute. There's tons of publications which you can find on scholargoogle.com. We already have several lectures that are available, so there's some for free. So for example, this one from Harvard University, one from Princeton, Khan Academy, has many lectures about bitcoins and blockchains. Then the University of Nicosia, that's not for free, but or only the first teaser course is for free. But they offer an entire master studies program about blockchains and bitcoins. So if you want to learn more about it, this is a good way. You get a degree. And then you have books. Actually, yes, but this is actually an e-learning approach. So this is very nice. And if you look into the course curriculum, they've really managed to bring in out of the blockchain tech community people like Antonopoulos and other really hard hitter experts who are not your traditional lecturer types. Yeah. So people who took those courses from this master studies program, they were actually quite impressed by it. Books, so there's this free book, Mastering Bitcoins by Antonopoulos, who's also lecturing here in this master's program. Then you have here Bitcoin and cryptocurrency technology, and there's tons more about smart contracts, Bitcoins, blockchains on Amazon. In that case, then not really for free. Okay, but that's in conclusion. So what we see is we're moving from a qualitative central planning, centralized reality to a quantitative decentralized world where we can, for the first time maybe in humanity, consent with each other in a peer-to-peer way, in a scalable way, and of course that's very scary for the existing power structure. Blockchain tech is now starting to turn society upside down, certainly in its 2.0 realization. So in the future, and this is actually very nice if you think about nepotism, corruption, crime, you could say in the future, if it ain't in the blockchain, then it didn't happen. And once it is in the blockchain, then it's track and traceable. And once it's track and traceable, then you establish a certain degree of transparency, which is rather detrimental for most of the corruption and governance criminality which we actually experience. And smart contracts are a big part of it. It's kind of still emerging. There's a lot of work to do. So I come in from a top-down area, from a top-down direction, having worked out solutions where only now I've started to find the problems. But there's this very, very vibrant crypto-anarcho startup community that has really put a lot of effort into this, and they're extremely smart people who continue working on it. And at least from my side as a scientist, I'm very much committed to push that further, and I can only recommend you look into it. So there's a lot of work to do it, and I think it can potentially have enormously beneficial effects on society. So that's it for my presentation. Thank you very much for paying attention.
Друзья, у нас есть время для пары вопросов. Поднимайте руку, я подойду к вам и, собственно, вы зададите вопрос. Ну, все понятно было, в принципе, я понимаю, да? Судя по рукам. Тогда, наверное...
It's the fluffy stuff.
Да. Тогда, вот, собственно, вопрос от Григория. Давай.
Hi, my name is Gregory. I'd like to ask you one, maybe too simple question, but all this story is focused on public key cryptography, right? And when you lose your private key, you lose everything.
Yes.
How this technology is protecting us from this case? This is one question. And another one, very practical. How would you advise to store our private keys for anything, for email, signing, whatever? Because it's 496 bits, for example, it's quite hard to remember.
Yes, these are very good points, and this actually, I would say, even when these are practical questions, but from a philosophical point of view, these are quite profound questions, because what it means is we have to learn to be responsible for our own actions again. Okay, so we cannot just delegate our own individual responsibility for our own actions to some third parties who really have no interest in taking care of us, who just want to take advantage of us, even when we deny that, is the reality. But indeed, if you lose your private key, say you have a Bitcoin account, and you lose your private key, you're doomed. That's right. So, but there are techniques, there are solutions. So, for example, there's a wallet called Armory, which allows you to basically store your private key. I recommend you print out your private key, you lock it away in a place where it's fireproof. Preferably you have several copies of it, and that way when it comes to at least securing your Bitcoin accounts, you should be rather safe. So I think similar principle could hold for you know how you run your PGP keys and so forth. Store them away from the internet, print them out, lock them away. Don't just let them lie around in paper form somewhere on a desk. And if you do that, then you know whatever happens, you know if somebody hacks your laptop, destroys your wallet and whatnot, then nothing can happen to you as long as you hold this private key, and then you can just restore your wallet again. There's no problem. So this is maybe just from a technological side. If I say there's a wallet for your bitcoins, it doesn't really mean the wallet has all those bitcoins, say, locally on your laptop. What you really have there is basically through the private key a collection of those parts of the ledger that is replicated over and over again to make it secure. Entry to those parts that really pertain to your own bitcoins. Okay. So yeah, at the moment I'm not sure if this public-private key in the long run is the best solution. At the moment that's what we have, so you have to learn to be responsible for managing your private keys. What other solutions could come up in the future? To be honest, at the moment I don't really know, but maybe somebody knows in the audience. Yeah.
Спасибо. Давайте.
Спасибо, Алекс. Скажите, пожалуйста, а что вы думаете по поводу применения блокчейн-технологии в деятельности политических партий? Насколько я знаю, в Австралии такая попытка уже сделана. Но вы не упомянули в своем выступлении еще об одном аспекте, достаточно важном для России.
Yes, so I don't know too much about the situation, how it is here. I know there's actually one party that accepts Bitcoin donations. That's what I heard, but I don't know what the name of the party is. I remember I came across that just recently, actually, before I traveled here. But indeed, so when I think about it further, so once again, this raises philosophical questions. To which degree do we need government the way we have it at the moment? If we suddenly can consent with each other in a peer-to-peer way, in a scalable way, then the question arises, what's still then the purpose of government as we have it? And all these political parties and whatnot. Again, I would think we should start to learn to be responsible for ourselves. We should not delegate responsibility to some third parties, some sort of government, politicians, corporations. I don't know. Take care of yourselves and find like-minded people with whom you share those sentiments, organize your own lives. You can find your own governance solutions that emerge in a free market capitalistic way, you could say, and just don't care about the government. It's a collapsing entity and worldwide. So I wouldn't even waste too much thought about that. If you are sorry, I know there's some government people here, but honestly, the technology we have now, it's so exciting. This is so much more absorbing and interesting than wasting your time on legacy systems, coercive and violent legacy systems that are going bankrupt anyhow.
Ну, на этой позитивной ноте, собственно, мы и закончим сегодня. Спасибо. Следующая лекция будет здесь же про криптовалюты. Собственно, в фойе ниже будет лекция про инвестиции, а на сцене будет лекция про управление инновациями. Собственно, не забывайте сдавать машинки для перевода. Вот, и встретимся через несколько минут. Спасибо.
Да? Закрыть надо тут сначала.
Я пока точно не знаю, но если будут на инвестиции.